So, hello to everyone. My name is Jadranka Stojanovski, and I will be moderator for the OPERAS session, which is starting now. Thank you for joining us, and we will have 4 presentations in this session, and you are free to ask a question after each presentation. So just to let you know, to remind you that you are standardly muted and it's not possible for you to broadcast video. So you are free to do whatever you like. And if you have questions for the presenters, please use the question and answer box, Q&A. You have in the bottom bar, Zoom bar, Q&A icon. And please name also the presenter you are asking something, because we have 4 of them. If you have technical questions or you just want to say hello, please use the chat box. And we will make the recording and presentation available as soon as possible. Of course, we are recording just the session where speakers agreed to be recorded. And yes, now it's my great pleasure to announce our first, maybe not speaker, but a main person in OPERAS community who will give you a really good and short overview of what is happening in OPERAS community, which is actually intended to provide infrastructure for the researchers in social sciences and humanities, and of course to make open science reality for SSH researchers. So it's my big honor to introduce Pierre Mounier, OPERAS coordinator, OpenEdition associate director, and director of Open Access Book co-director. And Pierre also teaches about digital humanities at the School of Advanced Studies in the Social Sciences in Paris. Sorry, Pierre, it was too difficult for me to pronounce French name of the school. Pierre published several books about social and political impact of information communication technologies, digital publishing, and digital humanities. Pierre, please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jadranka, and thank you to you and to the whole team for giving us the opportunity to have this session about OPERAS projects and OPERAS and the outputs of some of the OPERAS projects. What I'll do in my very short introduction is just to try to set up the scene, because most of the real presentations that will be done during this panel by the 3 presenters, 4 presenters, will come from the projects that are run by OPERAS. So my job here will be just to present to you what is OPERAS in a few words, so that you all can understand where all those results come from. I'm just going to share my screen, which is basically, I hope you can see it, which is basically the website of OPERAS. And you see that on the website of OPERAS, we are talking about the PubMed conference, because University of Zadar is a member of OPERAS, and we are advertising also the events organized by our members. So what is OPERAS in a few words? In a nutshell, if you like, OPERAS is the European research infrastructure dedicated to open scholarly communication for social sciences and the humanities. It gathers 56 organizations from 17 countries. Most of them are European countries, but not only. We have also members coming from Brazil, like Cielo, from Canada, like PKP, and also from a lot of different European countries. Our members are different types of organizations. They can be private or public, they can be infrastructure, they can be publishers. The common points they have is they are all involved into the question of scholarly communication in the social sciences and humanities. And our mission as a European distributed infrastructure is to first to support them, to support our members in the work they are doing, to provide efficient services to the researchers and to the societies, to disseminate and to broadcast the results of research in social sciences and humanities as openly and as possible. Our job is to support our members in collaboration, in collaborating between them. So our members are collaborating basically in two ways. First, by discussing together and working together into what we call special interest groups, which are working groups dedicated to specific topics, but they are also collaborating through projects to develop services or to do collaborative work together, and more particularly in European projects. Our job also as a European research infrastructure is to advocate for two things. We advocate for the social sciences and humanities in the context of open science, because the participation to open science is part of our mission and vision, more particularly. But we advocate also for open science in the social sciences and humanities. We are doing research as well about the needs and the perspectives of the social sciences and humanities disciplines in the open science framework, and you'll see that some of the results some of the presentations that you'll listen to in this panel are presenting results of this kind of research. And I think that our last mission, the last part of our mission, is to develop new services at continental and European level to serve best the needs of the European researchers and the European citizen related to research in social sciences and humanities. So if you go to the official websites of OPERA, which is operas-eu.org, you'll see the presentation on our brand new website, which is completely new. So please enjoy it. We are very proud of it, and thank you to the partners of OPERAS who have developed it, namely the Max Weber Stiftung and the University of Torino. And you'll have a very clear, I think, presentation of all the aspects of OPERAS and all what we do. So the three following presentations you will come from two European projects that are run within OPERAS, OPERAS P and Triple. You'll have details about that. And those are three exciting examples of what we can do inside the OPERAS community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pierre. It's my pleasure now to introduce our next speaker, is Suzanne Dumouchel. No, is Maciej, sorry. Is Maciej Maryl, and he's coming from Poland. Maciej is assistant professor and founding director of Digital Humanities Center at the Institute of Literary Research of the Polish Academy of Sciences. Maciej is literary scholar, sociologist, translator. He graduated from the University of Warsaw in Polish philology and applied social sciences, and completed his PhD thesis on Graduate School for Social Research. He was awarded scholarship of the Ministry of Science and Higher Education, the Foundation for Polish Science, Fulbright Junior Advanced Research Grant, and Fulbright Senior Award. Congratulations, Maciej. He is also involved in DARIA, Digital Methods and Practices Observatory Working Group, ALEA e-Humanities Working Group, OPERAS core group, and Open Methods editorial board. Maciej is currently chair of the Cost Action New Exploratory Phase in Research on East European Cultures of Dissent. Maciej, please.
Okay, so the first usual question in such cases is that, do you see my presentation or my notes or whatever else? No,
yes, we can just see your presentation.
Okay, so let me begin. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so the presentation I'm giving here is the collaborative effort. So the second author of it is Marta Błaszczyńska, who is also in the room, and will be both probably responding to any questions. So the work presented here is the result of the OPERAS P project, and basically it's based on one of the deliverables we have, OPERAS vision statement. So here you can see all the list of all authors and all contributors to this report, because we also had contributors from different countries who supplied the information about the local information. And the full paper will appear soon in F1000 Research, and you can follow OPERAS or my Twitter handle to get updates on that. Okay, so let us just set the scene. So with this little fellow here, which is, of course, we basically know what it is. It's COVID-19, the virus, which kind of reshaped many, if not all areas actually of our private and professional life in recent months. And what's important, it also reshaped the scholarly communication. So you may recall that from the very start, the pandemic highlighted the pressing need to access the research outputs without, the traditional economic or temporary barriers. And so, moreover, the discussion about the global and public efforts to find the vaccine and to make it available at affordable costs puts access to knowledge in sort of right perspective as a fundamental basic human right to access the outputs of scientific research. And you remember that many also big platforms made available COVID-related articles, journal articles, free of charge, so be on paywalls, just to enable the research on COVID. So we saw that in some cases we are able to to kind of get the open access, and that it is crucial actually for us to do research, to do successful research. So it's more or less against this background that we sketched a kind of scientific case for the future infrastructure for open scholarly communication, which serves as a kind of set of guidelines for OPERAS actually to where the key fields are on which we should operate, and what are the key problems we should address. And basically, the digital transformation brought about all the new opportunities for creating, sharing, discovering, accessing scholarly resources. But the uptake in SSH, social sciences and humanities, was fairly unsatisfactory. So we basically proposed a way here in this paper, in the broader sense, how to address SSH communities with an infrastructure for open scholarly communication. But before we get there, let us just define the key concepts here. Basically, the concept of the scholarly communication. So we follow here the definition from the recent report by European Commission, Future of Scholarly Publishing and Scholarly Communication. It's a report by an expert group which addressed this issue, and it reads as follows: that scholarly communication is any form of exchange used by scholars and researchers to participate in the elaboration of knowledge through critical discussion, conversation with fellow humans. This encompasses all the procedures from the purely informal conversation to highly formalized stage of publishing. So you can see that in this approach, scholarly publishing is kind of formalized subset of scholarly communication. So this perspective allows us to look at other types of communication as parts of scholarly communication, like treaties, discussions, dialogues, debates, letters. And we also put here this idea that publishing or scholarly communication is an integral part of research workflow. And what you see here are like different conceptualization of research workflows. So like, you know, there are different diagrams, but everywhere this scholarly communication is important. And in the OPERAS approach is based on the fact that we assume that at every stage of this research process, there is some communication going on. So communication is not only an important factor of doing research, but the kind of enabler of scholarship. And this is especially visible if we trace the roots of scholarly communication back to, let's say, 16th century, for instance, 18th century, sorry, but I mean, 16 we get started, but the picture I have is from the 18th century. But nevertheless, the development of postal network in the 16th century, which gradually became more and more elaborated, allowed unprecedented knowledge exchange between scholars. So actually only with the communication, they started to communicate within and beyond Europe, forging this idealistic notion of Republic of Letters, so this kind of common intellectual space. So communication in this sense presupposes the existence of community where this knowledge is exchanged and negotiated. And again, we think that that communication is the basic factor here that enables research on all the stages of the scientific workflow. Okay, so how does it look in Europe? And this is just a glimpse, because later today in this session, you will hear from Krešimir more about the landscape study we did, as OPERAS did for the basically discussing scholarly communication in Europe. I'm just said from the kind of policy perspective that what we have in Europe for now is the so-called holistic approach towards open science of the European Commission, which tries with different means to boost the uptake of open access, so support for open data, FAIR principles, lack of funding for hybrid journals in framework programs. Also, the beginning of European Open Science Cloud is this sign of this approach. However, if we look at the national level, in Europe, the uptake is uneven. I mean, there are like countries where open access is more is widely used. Some countries which are skeptical, but overall, it's uneven and again in need of major boost, which could be provided by research infrastructure. So what are the key obstacles? And again, this is the huge topic, and I'm just concentrating on just two main keywords, like economy and prestige. And of course, there's economy of prestige and etc. But with those two keywords, we understand the situation. So the economy problem is that large commercial players are reluctant to adopt models which would sort of decrease their revenue. And on the other hand, we have scholars, institutions, and career assessment programs, which are largely based on publication in traditional formats and in renowned journals owned by big players. So there's this huge sort of problem we have to deal with lots of issues at stake. And I'm not stopping here because I would talk like for the rest of my presentation about those problems, but just to give you the overview what we are basically facing. So why SSH? Because we said that we're discussing SSH now, and OPERAS is dedicated to social sciences and humanities, mostly because of the specificity of scholarly communication in SSH, which needs, in our opinion, targeted approach. And this specificity, again, in really broad terms, stems for lesser needs, smaller needs for immediate access to results. So it's not like, you know, rocket science that when you need immediate access to the newest research. The pace is slower in the humanities, but also these whatever prestige or citations would be gained by a paper in a different pace than in STEM sciences. So this is like the main difference. Another one is that we have discipline-specific formats. So like monograph, which is a major means of dissemination of findings in the humanities, at least, but in social sciences as well. It's a very important one, or scholarly editions. So they're like specific formats which are again underestimated in current evaluation practices, in current even in open access programs. Sometimes there's a big impact on journals, not so much about other issues. And also there are new scholarly communication genres in digital humanities, so in the digital subset of the humanities, which are again in a need to be addressed, and that includes research data, which is again in the humanities fairly new concept to consider our research assets as data. So again, there's a big bag of problems which sort of make the specificity of communication SSH and should be addressed directly. And how to address them. So during our work on the OPERAS vision, we sort of made the list of key areas, and you can see them here with this lovely acrostic we made, but of course it's not like we thought to have 6 areas and somehow we got them, but actually we started with 6 areas and then realized that we can, for simplicity, we can call them like this. So open access to outputs, providing for SSH genres, evaluation and quality assurance, researcher-driven infrastructure, attentive to local communities, and stakeholders of various kinds. So these are those key areas for the research infrastructure in SSH. And for the reminder on my presentation, so like 8-ish minutes, I will basically unpack some of those concepts. So let's start with the open access to outputs. And it's not enough to have something out there, like something open in the open. If you put something on your web page or in your repository, it's not enough for people, of course, to access it. So doing the research, like different literature reviews, we always stumble upon the problem that in order to assess who wrote something in this field, you need to access lots of different databases and resources, and especially within the open access community. So there are some aggregators, of course, but they provide different search functions. Sometimes there are limited options. Sometimes you don't have full text search, etc., etc. So although there's lots of open access content out there, it's really hard to access it. So the first key area we think is important here is to have the kind of federated entry point to access such content, and this would also provide the boosts and argument for others to go open access because your work could be found. And one idea for that is for kind of single discovery platform is the Triple project, about which you'll hear just in a minute from Suzanne today. So this is a concept of how to make this idea possible. So moving along, another thing is providing for SSH genres. I already mentioned that that we have those the specificity of SSH also stems from its genres, and we need to have basically an infrastructure which would enable support for monographs, which are sometimes neglected, as I already mentioned. And here an interesting idea is the OpenEdition freemium model for not only for monographs, but also for monographs, which allows to share, to publish the work, the book in HTML format in open access, and get still some revenue for small publishers from the sales of ebooks. And looking for such models for supporting those genres is one of the tasks this the open access research infrastructure could have. Another is technical support for scholarly editions, like for instance, how to enable TEI scholarly editions and make them also, again, the valid format for scholarly communication. And also lots of new genres that go beyond the traditional book, like open notebooks, living books, which allow for versioning. So you can, you don't have like a finished book. It's always could be updated somehow, and you somehow need to have a platform for that. Also to support annotations, blogs, etc. So we have all those digital formats that should be somehow supported by infrastructure. Next thing, evaluation and quality assurance support. So the infrastructure could also help in one, again, and this is this sort of prestige part we're talking about here, is that basically many institutions and countries base their performance indicators on metrics, bibliometrics, disregarding some biases. For instance, underrepresentation of SSH works, or especially monographs and critical editions in the databases of providers of such impact metrics, for instance. So what infrastructure can do is to help providing the actual impact, for instance, metrics based on open access publications that could be collected. But also it could take into consideration the wide range of scholarly activities. So we have, for instance, a recent report by European Commission Working Group on rewards under open science, which kind of argues for multi-dimensional criteria in evaluation. So basically that not only you publish something and that counts, but also if you publish data with this, how did you publish this data? Is it like findable? Is it fair, basically? So all those criteria could be somehow taken into consideration and supported by infrastructure. And another thing is like enabling novel peer review practices, like for instance, post-publication open peer review. And as I already mentioned, we submitted this article to F1000 Research, which provides this sort of service that the paper is published, and then you see the reviews and comments from authors, etc. So everything is kind of open, but you need infrastructure to provide that. And even if you're a journal who wants to apply that, you need some infrastructure to apply those things. And last but not least, maybe even it's the most important part, that infrastructure, which big research infrastructure on the European level, connecting many players, have impact and may advocate for policy and institutional changes, and the voice would be hopefully heard. But this is also the critical mass which could enable the uptake of those the new criteria, which would be more fit to our current needs. Researcher-driven infrastructure, and again, we're kind of back on this economy side as well. But this is the problem of the priorities of the infrastructure. So basically, if it's commercial, and of course, commercial infrastructure also tries to address researcher needs, but then there's this revenue question. And OPERAS, again, feels that kind of providing this healthy balance between commercial interests of all the stakeholders, so publishers, providers, researchers, would protect actually the interests of scholars and smaller players. And there's a handful of examples. I'm not going to dig into them because I'm running out of time here, but 2.5% commitment or invest in open infrastructure, or Hermeos, for instance, it's like also OPERAS project which provided certain set of tools for smaller players to use in their, smaller publishers to use in their work. And these are all the examples how the researcher-driven approach may kind of boost other players in the field. And finally, oh, not finally, we're on A, not X, we're there. So, but we're getting there. So, attentive local communities through multilingualism. So, basically, OPERAS is dedicated to support bibliodiversity, which is basically the concept of bringing diversity to the world, biodiversity to the world of books. So, basically, the assumption is that although English, I mean, we're now the conference in English, so we're stuck in English. English enables communication on a certain level, but also there are certain fields, and especially again in the humanities, where local languages should be used to ensure that some scholarly communities can communicate with each other, or to basically take up some problems which are relevant just for smaller communities, but are still relevant scholarly. So there are also nice examples, and I'm like, for instance, Cielo in Brazil, which kind of address those issues, basically supporting national infrastructures to by providing high quality content in non-English languages. So last but not least, before the conclusion, is the stakeholders of various kinds. So basically, this is something, again, which appeared in the previous fields as well, that we need to accommodate needs of different players. So researchers, publishers, libraries, media, non-profit organizations, companies. So again, this kind of research infrastructure needs to be aware that there's a plethora of interests in the field, and they need to be taken into account, and therefore those groups should be included on many, if not every, so many stages of decision processes, or creating the tools, the services, so we can take into consideration the problems of certain group, which may not be a problem to another. So that's the thing. So to conclude, so the question, are we there yet? And the answer is that we are not, but still we, and also we can see the pretty disturbing processes, like, for instance, that those temporary paywalls introduced in the beginning of the pandemic are now being turned back to closed access, and some economists sort of try to, like Mariana Mazzucato, for instance, to urge us to kind of reconsider public-private partnerships in the wake of the possible upcoming crisis. So we have to ensure that public does not have to overpay for the results of research it has already funded, and be it COVID vaccine or research article. So we feel that successful change and implementation of open science principles in SSH will require a fundamental reconfiguration of the entire landscape that addresses stakeholders and the economy and prestige level. And thus, the bottom line is that we believe that only such infrastructure, scholarly driven infrastructure, inclusive infrastructure for scholarly communication, could address these aspects and bring the open science. So I would like to just finish with kind of rephrasing the unpopular recent political slogan in the UK, and with to address the what OPERAS can do, so it can get open science done, and we hope that we're getting closer to that. So thank you very much for your attention. I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Maciej. We do not have questions in question and answers area. So if, yeah, maybe there will be some. No, so I suggest that we move to our next speaker, Suzanne Dumouchel. And Suzanne is for several years part of OPERAS community. She has PhD in French literature and is research engineer at French National Center for Research. Yes, the main French Center for Research. I don't know. S is for Pierre, help me.
What do you want to know?
CNRS. Yes. Yes, just abbreviation.
Yes, exactly. CNRS.
Everyone knows what this abbreviation means. Okay. Also at Huma-Num. After working as a researcher during several years, especially in the domain of knowledge sharing between experts and citizens, Suzanne started working for research infrastructure. She is coordinator of OPERAS research infrastructure, devoted to scholarly communication in social sciences and humanities, and is a member of Daria Eric Coordination Office dedicated to digital arts and humanities, scientific coordinator of Triple Horizon 2020 project. She is also task leader of SSHOC project, SSH cluster project. Suzanne?
Thank you, Jadranka. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Just to clarify that I'm not anymore part of the Daria Coordination Office, even if it was a pleasure to work there. So just to clarify this point. Can you see my screen? Yeah? Okay. So let's start. So I will, I'd like to present you the Triple project, which is an InfraIOSC, the answer to an InfraIOSC call, and which aim to, yeah, the title of my presentation is Co-Building Social Science and Humanities Discovery Platform to Enhance Innovation. So this is a presentation made by several people from the Triple project. You have their name just below. So yeah. Sorry, yeah. So here you have the plan of what I'm going to say. So explain and present generally the Triple project, and then I'd like to focus on three main aspects. The first one is about the identification of the user requirement. The second one, the market and opportunity analysis that we already did in the project. And the third one is technical architecture we envision for the future Triple platform. And then I will present Triple in a general ecosystem. So the Triple project, what and why? First, let me start with key facts. So the Triple project has been launched, was almost a year, 7th October 2019. It's financed under the Horizon 2020 framework with a budget of 5.6 million euros. It has a duration of 42 months, so it's a quite long project, coordinated from France by Huma-Num CNRS, and we have 19 partners from 13 European countries, so it's a quite long project with a lot of partners. And currently we have almost 87 staff members working for one or more of the different Triple work package. So Triple Consortium, you have here the different logo of the 19 partners from the 17 European countries. So why Triple? So our project should answer to the following constraint, which breaks in a certain manner the valorization of research. So the first point is the strong fragmentation of social science and humanities research, which is a point that has already been presented, and you already heard about that thanks to the presentation of Maciej. The second one is that the social science and humanities open scholarly resources are currently scattered across local repositories, which make them difficult to identify, to find, and to reuse. Which bring us to the third point, a low use and reuse of social science and humanities output, not really research, but mainly output. And missed interdisciplinary collaboration possibility within the social science and humanities field, but not only, also outside the SSH field, and of course with a limited societal impact. So to solve this constraint, Triple is meant to be an innovative, multilingual and multicultural discovery solution, and it provides a single access point to explore, find, access and reuse social science and humanities resources. So Triple is for three main objects, let's say, the data, SSH data, the project, researchers project, and researchers profile, so the profile. So data, project, and profile for the three objects, and which give us the name Triple. So we are organized to solve also these the different constraints that have been raised. We are organized in different work package, in several work package, 9 currently, with especially work package 2, which is working on the data acquisition side. And they have a lot of parallel tasks with work package 3, which is about the co-design and user research. So we have on one side the data provider, and on the other side the user involvement. So it's really good to make them work in parallel. And then the output of both work package can help to design, to develop actually the triple platform in work package 4 and the additional services which are in work package 5. So this is mainly how we are organized. Work package 6, I will tell you more about that at the end of my presentation. And work package 7 is mainly about the sustainability of the future triple platform. And I will present you the first result of this work package in a minute. So let's move to the identification of the user requirement. So let's focus on the user needs. So the first phase of the project was to define user needs. User orientation is one of the central goals of the triple platform, which means that users are key to all phases of the process, from needs analysis to tool testing and evaluation, as users know best how they work and what they need. So therefore, Triple integrates co-design principle into research and the development of new services. So this is the dedicated work package 3, co-design and user needs, and it carried out 37 interviews and transcripted them to achieve 8 different scenarios and persona. So here are an example of how the persona, the triple persona have been built. So from the result of the 13.7 interview with the user story of the user, the person interviewed, and then the pain points and the goals of this user with some main aspect about the citation of this user, about what would be very useful for the development of triple platform. So this show you the strong attention that we have within the consortium to the user involvement, and how to make sure that we won't build another platform which won't be used or only by 10 researchers in Europe, but we really expect to involve as much as possible the researcher in the use of the platform, and to let them give us some feedback for that. And then we have the triple scenario. So the scenarios follow a narrative of each of our 8 persona interacting with the triple platform in order to achieve specific goals. So the scenarios are useful for us in fostering discussion around platform functionalities, for instance, and they also can be used in co-design workshops to enable participants to quickly get a better understanding of what the platform is aiming to, especially in terms of functionality. So we had in mind to organize different kind of co-design workshop. We are currently discussing how to reorganize them due to the current European and worldwide situation, in order to continue to have the possibility to set up this kind of workshop, but of course remotely right now. So how to define the user requirements? So they are obtained via the transformation of scenario in so-called scenario step. So it is done by transforming the scenarios into a list of activities that the user conducts within the scenario narrative. So these steps lead then to a more formal definition of the user needs as a list. So this requirement list is a basis for the identification of functionalities and subsequent production of interface prototype. So we would like also to make sure to study the context in which the platform is developed, not only from the point of view of user requirements, as mentioned before, but also from a competitive and environmental vantage point. So in some tasks, we therefore focus on the study of existing platforms and various macro-environmental factors that will have an impact on the durability and sustainability of the platform. So this is currently the result of the first work done under the work package 7 about the sustainability of the platform. So we studied 26 platforms from all over the world and analyzed their features, function, and usability. We also led interviews with 2 open science experts and 6 executives of scholarly communication platform. So this is the global presentation of the cartography, let's say, of the platform we studied for this analysis. So from both the user research and the market and opportunity analysis, the consortium is now able to specify the aims and the envisaged impact of the triple platform, as well as the relation between the different tools. So, open science and digital technology have changed the way of how research is conducted, and it leads too often to disorganized mass of data through scattergun approach. One of our aims is to adapt technology to usage to make data organized and accessible to all range of society. So you can see on this slide first the audience that we target with triple project: the student, scientists, policymakers, journalists, and citizens. Also, the platform will focus on 3 main kinds of resources represented under the form of open book in the slide, so publication and data, profile of researchers, and researcher profile project. So the 3 objects which bring to triple. Triple focus also on subject-specific and multilingual diversity. This is something really important within the triple project to ensure strong representation of the variety of European culture and language through the data that are harvested, but also through the alignment of the different vocabulary and thesaurus that are used for that. And on the other end, what we focus also on how to enable researchers to identify not only data, but also other scientists and projects in the European research area. So this project really aims to make a link between data, profile, and project in order to develop a quite complete ecosystem for the researcher when he or she wants to work on a specific topic. And then the platform will organize data from different providers, findable through a search engine, and workable through annotation and visualization services. It also offers ways to connect with other scientists through services of recommendation and based on trust. Last but not least, a crowdfunding service will also help small projects to get funded by anyone willing to contribute. So these are the part of, this is the part of the work package 5, the innovative services, which will be linked to the core of the platform. The core is the search engine of the data publication, profile, and project. So what we expect is to promote then a community of practice, a concept to capture the idea that a group of people have a common interest in a certain area to deliver better learning and improved results by working together and sharing expertise which benefit to the larger collective. So Triple is also positioning itself on the European scene to collaborate with other projects and thus participates globally in the advancement of open science. So one of its aims is to build bridges between social science and humanities and society, and this is why Triple is one of the OPERAS services. So as you know, the EOSC aims at being the, so let's focus mainly on the links between Triple and the EOSC, as Triple will be one of the services provided by OPERAS, part of the future, of the current actually EOSC marketplace. So the EOSC aims at being the implementation of open science in Europe. It started to be designed as an ecosystem of infrastructure based on common different principles. such as elaboration on standards, good practices, training, and things like that. So it published a call last year focused on innovative services, offering access through the EOSC Hub to satisfy the evolving needs of the scientific community. And Triple was launched in this context, with a specific attention on collaboration models, including incentive mechanism for a user-oriented open science approach. Then, that means that Triple is natively dependent on and connected with the EOSC implementation. So you can notice here the different strong connection of Triple with other projects involved in open science. So first, because we produce, adapt, and reuse general and specific guidelines in coordination with related projects such as SHOC, and we provide training and skills to the project member in order to ensure they all have competencies on open science practices and workflow. Secondly, because we integrate the Triple platform to the EOSC, and to reach this objective, three strategies are going to be implemented. The first one is, of course, the more natural one for us is through OPERAS research infrastructure, as Triple is one of the main, one service of the catalog of services of OPERAS. The second one is to establish, to connect Triple platform to the SSH open marketplace provided by the SHOC project. And the last one is to include directly the Triple discovery service into the EOSC catalog. So let's focus now before the conclusion to the main on the main impact of the project. So 5 main impacts are identified. The first one is that Triple integrates co-design principle into research and the development of new services. Users are here key to all phases of the project. The second one is the strong ties between research, industry, and society by involving public institutions and companies into a scientific project. Third one is that Triple is also a cultural platform to discover European diversity in terms of society, language, and practices. It helps to promote cultural diversity in Europe. The fourth one, Triple contributes to the objective of open science. It's quite obvious as it improves the access of the open content and resource and facilitates collaboration across disciplinary and language boundaries. And of course, the data sharing and usage are based on the FAIR principle. And finally, the integration into the European Open Science Cloud, EOSC. So Triple will be a major component of the social science and humanities marketplace, which will be the entry door of the EOSC for all the different social science and humanities service. So through Triple, we expect to have new innovative actors involved in the complex EOSC ecosystem. So thank you very much for your attention. Do not hesitate to contact us or join us via the website or OPERAS newsletter, when you can find a lot of news about OPERAS, of course, but also about Triple. And notably, let me just tell you that the Triple project will launch very soon a forum to foster inclusion and solidarity within the SSH research community. So everybody is invited to participate and to contribute, to give feedback about the platform, and then to work on develop collaboration on further research topic. And this will contribute to test the full Triple 360-degree experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suzanne. This was really excellent presentation with so much information, and I'm sure that that our attendees enjoyed. So we have one question for you from Johan Roig. Could this project play a role in providing a platform that brings together the currently quite scattered SSH diamond journals, which are often quite bibliodiverse and very much a part of the open science landscape in SSH?
Yes, thank you, Joanne, for this question. This is a really good question. To be very honest, we had this discussion this morning with Pierre within the OPERAS coordination team. So yes, the answer is yes. This is the plan. We have to organize that. Yeah, to see how to involve them. But yeah, this is in discussion.
And the second question in the chat area is from Mateus Lobo. Does triple include all areas such as mathematics and physics?
No. So the aim of triple is really to facilitate the discovery of SSH data, researchers, project, and researchers. However, what we really expect with the, through the innovative services is to build more interdisciplinary projects between the SSH researchers and other fields. And for instance, it can help researchers in mathematics and physics to be able to identify experts which can be relevant for their own topic in SSH and to develop a further collaboration.
And Suzanne, may I ask one question?
Yeah, sure, Jadranka, please.
Yes, and Mateus thanks, is saying thanks for your answer. So Suzanne, my question would be, I know because I'm part of it that triple community and triple project consider research data. Although in social sciences and humanities research data are not to the research data is not given such an importance as natural sciences and life sciences. So, and but you're not mentioning research data even when you are speaking about inclusion in EOSC. So, and you mentioned that you will connect data publication profiles and projects. But where I would like to see also research data on your graphical presentation. So could you tell me more about the plans related to it?
Sure, Jadranka. Actually, it was more to shorten a bit on the picture, but when I say data, it's research data.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so research data are quite obvious and expected as well in the triple in the harvesting of the different data provider.
Yes, but you mentioned data publication as one entity, but I'm wrong.
Yeah. No, it was not as one entity. The fact is that we are very cautious with the word data. I don't like it because when you say data, people don't know if you include or not publication. And for social science and humanities, so this is why I prefer, even if it's not very used yet, but I prefer the word research output or digital object or something like that, you know. Where I'm sure that data are not understood by themselves without thinking of the publication. So this is why I decided to put in the slide both data and publication to be sure that people will understand that publication are also part, of course, part and expected in the triple project.
Yeah.
Is it clearer? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Suzanne. Yes, my opinion is I would like to see the future where research data will live their own independent life from publication. So it's data life.
Yeah, but I agree with that. If we are sure that publication can also have their publication life, you know, in an independent way. So the fact is that yet there is this tendency to mix everything. And yeah, Pierre, you want to intervene?
Yes.
May I say something? I think that in the SSH community, we are aware, maybe more than in other disciplines, of the importance of the interpretative discourse on research data, and that research data without interpretative discourse are important or necessary, let's say, but they are not quite complete. So there is an importance of the interpretative discourse, which is the publication, by the way. So I think that the specificity of our community is to consider research data and publications are two parts of the same whole, even though they can be separated, but they are strongly interlinked. So I think that's our specificity from our disciplines, and that's a specificity we shouldn't give up, I think.
So you don't think that someone's interpretation could be completely different on using the same set of data from someone else's interpretation?
Yes, of course. There should, yeah, of course, there could be and there should be discussion on different interpretations of the same data set, for example. But that's the life of humanities and social sciences. Interpreting and recognizing that there could be different types of interpretation and different interpretations of the same data set. That's our life in our disciplines. Mm-hmm. And we don't think that truth is relying only in the data. It's also in the data and in the interpretation.
Thank you, Pierre. Alex Pogacnik is commenting, a colleague from Slovenia, just a note, in some SSH disciplines like philosophy, history, researchers don't talk about research data. They are using the term sources. So yeah. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, this is the issue, but also what is interesting as well, because we have a lot of words to describe some very close reality, and this is where we have to be cautious to understand each other and explaining what we have in mind when we use one word or another.
Yes, I completely understand you, and I can agree, but actually I would really like so much that we separate the data or sources or whatever we call them from publication, and let them really to live their own life, asking for different interpretations, asking to be used independently from publications, and yeah.
But Jadranka,
Yeah.
Do you agree that data and source data are not natural objects, but they are generated by research methods and generated by research activity, so that when you present the data, you need to present also the methods that generated them. So that's where the concept, for example, that Maciej presented of data papers or data publication is interesting, because you still need to have a discourse, a publication presenting the data and how the data have been, in which context, in fact, the data has been generated. And I think that in our disciplines, and more particularly in the humanities, the notion of context is very important, to describe the context. To enable a discussion which is fully informed about what we are talking about.
Yeah, thank you, Pierre. Yes, that's actually one of the biggest problem related to data repository and actually storing data in the formats and in the form that so they can be reusable, and this description is actually so complex and so depending on the discipline, on research methods, as you mentioned, and so we have a lot of work, but I'm ready to put a lot of effort to describe data properly, just to let them live their own life. Sorry, I took maybe too much time, but we are good with time. But now I will really stop, and maybe we will continue this discussion in real life soon. But and it's my great pleasure to announce the last speaker in the OPERAS session, Krešimir Zauder. And yeah, Krešo graduated information sciences and English language and literature, and got his PhD in information sciences. He's specialist for symptometrics and bibliometrics and informatics, whatever you like. Before joining our team at the Department of Information Sciences at University of Zadar, Krešo worked at National and University Library and at Institute for Social Sciences, Ivo Pilar. No, Institute for Social Sciences without. Yeah, you can turn your
Yes, the other one, not the Ivo Pilar.
The other one. Okay, thank you, Krešo. I'm always mixing those two institutes. And yes, during his career, Krešo became somehow an expert for data management. So, and he is actually the person with whom you can talk and discuss for hours and argue and so,
which is exactly why I stayed out of the data discussion for now.
We rarely agree upon something, but it's really inspiring and yes, we will never give up one from another. So, Krešo, it's my pleasure to give you floor to present your results of our task.
Yes, so this will be different in scope than the other presenters, as soon as this gives me full screen. Yes, excellent. So we were going to show a little bit what we did as a landscape study for OPERAS P. Now I will be talking on the behalf of University of Zadar OPERAS team, mostly, in which capacity our esteemed organizer and moderator Jadranka acted as a sort of benevolent dictator and researcher. And I would like to thank all of the members of the OPERAS team for the great support they have shown us in data collection, questionnaire dissemination and translation, focus group organization, and so on and so forth, so we could actually cover more ground in this landscape study. And especially to some members who have shown great patience in answering my and Jadranka's often innovative questions. Okay, so what was the landscape study? The landscape study, the aim was to conduct a study of the scholarly communication in social sciences and humanities to serve as the basis for further work within OPERAS P. This was a supportive task. And it basically consisted of two main subtasks. One was the identification of problems, needs, and habits of the SSH scholars in Europe. So the methods we used was a widely distributed questionnaire in which, with which we intended to collect broad data, and we made a questionnaire that was quite long, to be honest, and which went into breadth in order to see what are the problems and needs and habits of the social sciences and humanities scholars in terms of what do they need, how do they publish, what do they use, what types of publications are important for them, and so on. We added to this focus groups in order to provide additional qualitative insight, in order to discuss these often difficult topics to gain some qualitative data that would allow us to perceive this complicated matter in a more broad terms. For example, we have already seen that the research data is not well defined. When we get to the idea of publication, this is again a little bit of a problem, what somebody considers publication, what not. So focus groups allowed us to discuss these matters. Focus was on the problems in publishing, information seeking, access, collaboration, and usage of specific services, tools, and different forms of formats. And this was the part of the landscape study focused on the scholar in their various roles as researcher, as editor, as reviewer, and so on. The other part of the study was aimed at identification and description of stakeholders important for the scholarly communication systems in social sciences and humanities. So we gather data about publishers, service providers, policymakers, e-infrastructures, research infrastructures, funders and academic institutions, and so on, as provided by members of OPERAS network. Then we compiled and analyzed this inventory of information about examples of these different types of stakeholders, mostly aimed at at issues in their business models and open access policies. To start from the questionnaire was timed exactly as the pandemic in Europe. So it was a little bit, we got a little less response than we hoped for, but we still considering the time it was disseminated, I think we still got a good response. Most respondents were from France, then Poland, Croatia, Germany, and Italy, as well as a lot of other countries. As far as the focus groups go, focus group participants were asked to answer, to discuss in their different roles as scholars, meaning in the roles as authors, reviewers, editors, and publishers. Our focus groups participants were mainly from Croatia, in which we focused on 2 focus groups because one of them was a pilot focus group for the others, and then Poland, Italy, Greece, and Germany. So the questionnaire was quite large and the focus groups quite detailed. So we can only review selected findings here, and we hope to inform you of the more detailed findings in the forthcoming publications, which we hope to publish real soon. And finish writing, actually. So the one I will go into more detail very soon is that there are some problems with perception of open access and availability of open access options. The other is that costs related to publishing are far too high, and even more worrying, they may cause negative perception of open access. Now, a significant problem with this are regional and institutional differences in wealth. And among many scholars, this practice can almost give a bad name to open access, because they sometimes even get open access synonymous with authors paying for something, with self-archiving left out by scholars who are not very familiar with the publishing process or in its theory. What I will talk about a little bit more is that SSH scholars' needs are very much influenced by both the research traditions, which is somewhat obvious, but also by geographic regions. Some problems and needs are reported differently based on geographic region of the same research tradition, and especially between research traditions. Also, the majority of researchers claim that the publishing platforms they use simply do not provide all the services and functionalities they need, which is a case for new infrastructure and new services and more planning. There seems to be a lot of confusion on the starting points to both publishing and searching for information, especially, of course, among the younger researchers. But a lot of respondents said that when they need something, they frequently don't know where to start looking, either for training or for publishing or for finding and accessing publication. So how to start is a problem. And finally, research data, which we talked about here, is starting to be seen as a valuable publication type among SSH scholars, in which they did say that it's a separate publication type. Now, we have just talked about research data a little bit, and one of the problems I believe in that is that research data is just started to come out, in which case, in which capacity we will need to classify it better. Research data is just the umbrella term for all the stuff happening around data. We currently have no idea what it is. We have structured research data gathered through research. We have data that's used for research, but is not made by research, such as, for example, Facebook data, or bank data, or census data, and so on and so forth. Users on the internet are producing data with each click. Then we have the video data produced by this feed, and so on and so forth. Then we have qualitative data, such as, for example, transcripts of our focus groups during this research. And the important thing here is that the SSH scholars are beginning to see the value of this, but we still have no classification for what we mean by research data. We need to go deeper than just the research data. In much the same way, we need to go deeper when we say just publication, especially given the computers and the web and all that stuff. Now, additionally, SSH scholars actually started using additional tools, and among the various tools we provided to the, we wanted answered about, such as, for example, reference management, they were most dissatisfied with the advanced writing tools needed for writing contemporary scientific publications. Now, among these, as I said, these are just some findings selected for this talk. We hope to give more in-depth analysis of all this in forthcoming publications. One of the varying and interesting trends in this came a lot from focus groups, was perception and availability of open access. Now, logically, scholars mostly perceive open access positively. They consider it to improve the visibility, facilitate their own research, some even consider it a moral obligation. But what was surprising was the level of misinterpretation of open access. For example, some find open access a bad thing because it is reduced to author fees for publication. It can be reduced to APCs in scholars' minds who are not that interested into publishing. Now, this is obviously a PR thing, but I think that the important thing to take home from this is that we shouldn't presuppose that when we say to scholars open access, that everybody thinks it's a positive thing. Now, it needs to be, well, better PR seems to be needed for open access in order for people to realize that there's much more to open access than just the negative examples they have been given. Another barrier that was seen in focus groups as for open access was career advancement and promotion systems. Sometimes they just do not respect it. For example, in many countries, scholars claimed that if they publish only in open access, they can't get enough credit for their career advancement and promotion systems. So this needs to be further looked into, and of course the consciousness about open access needs to be raised among the policymakers. It seems to be moving forward, but perhaps not as fast as we would like it to. According to the questionnaire, which focused on a more mechanical part of the whole thing, more than a half of the SSH scholars have reported problems with not enough open access literature, with, interestingly, humanities scholars reporting more problems with accessing literature than the social science scholars. Now, this means not just more open access, but more explaining of what are the various venues open access can take place in practice. But when we get to the details of how scholars, of what scholars need, of what their problems are, of what tools they use, we can also get to this, to many actually differences between disciplines as related for publishing and access. For example, when we took questions about problems in publishing journals, problems in publishing books, and accessing literature, and clustered respondents, we got two main clusters of answers. This was one. I couldn't put the whole dendrogram on screen because it's simply too high. And this was the other. You will notice that these two clusters are almost identical to the way most countries usually classify social sciences and humanities. So various different problems were seen between various disciplines, which simply needs to be taken into account by further infrastructure. Now, as far as stakeholders went, the stakeholder data gathering and analysis provided an important overview and very importantly, an inventory of contacts for the OPERAS consortium for further service and infrastructure coordination and agreement. Some of the findings of the stakeholders included that publishers employ very much mixed business models, receiving the revenues from very multiple sources, which are unevenly distributed across geographical areas, sub-discipline, and different organizational types. Service providers that enable the creation and circulation and discovery of scholarly content in social sciences and humanities currently mostly have only a national or regional reach. So coordination on the European level seems to be very much needed here. Additionally, the majority of international and national funders have open access policies in place, but there is a lack of adoption of open access principle among private funders and those who allocate public funds regionally or locally. Further on, the prevalence of our policies or mandates among scholarly institutions is very geographically specific. So once we get to funding and policies, regions have their own way of going on about it. But on the positive side, policymakers do have some open access policies already in place, but they are currently taking shape and only starting to influence the landscape. And of course, there are already existing national representatives for most of the S3 in which I won't go into much because we have listened about that for triple. Now, I'm moving on a little fast, but I hope there will be time for discussion about this. Our conclusion from all of this is that various perceptions of that new infrastructure and new services should take into account these things that I have already talked about, such as various perceptions of open access among scholars, some of which are surprisingly bad, such as people saying open access, oh, that's bad, that's a money grabbing scheme, which was really surprising for us. Then the regional and disciplinary differences, which seem to be pronounced both on the level of the individual researcher's problems and needs, and on the level of organizing of the infrastructure and services that are provided and policies that are provided to facilitate scholarly communication. So when we take all of this into account, there simply seems to be no way to provide currently a complete detailed specification that is complete of needed, that is done, that can be just implemented, of needed infrastructures and services. So instead, an agile responsive development cycle should be adopted with frequent user studies as it progresses, especially due to the fact that we are seeing a change in how we perceive publications. And we are most sure to perceive a lot of changes in how we perceive, for example, research data and types of publications that will be needed to facilitate scholarly communication that then need to be translated from one side into services and from the other side into policies which go into for example, career advancement and getting credit for the job, in citation systems, and then in tools needed for all of this. For example, in advanced writing tools, which need to be able to handle, for example, external research data. Okay? So the only way, in our opinion, to tackle these problems is to start with a well-defined set of services that grows in connection to user studies as time progresses. And with this, I would like to finish and ask you for questions and discussion. We still have, I think,
we still have
7
minutes, yes. Thank you, Krešimir. There is already one question for you from Johan. The default high fee payment problem is addressed by Coalition S, who advocates non-author facing fees the funder pays principle for, and by initiatives like Open Library of Humanities, with its library consortium model where the library support open access fee for authors.
Okay, so not so much as a question, but
it's more
information. But this is true, and we are well aware of this. But what we transferred here was not our opinion, but what the scholars from different countries and different sub-disciplines of scholarly sciences that are not that involved inside the publishing process think. This was simply what our respondents answered in the questionnaire and told us in focus groups.
Thank you. There is another question for M. Cabelli. It's clear that costs related to publishing are too high, as you mentioned, and researchers or writers are reluctant to contribute to open access materials. Is there any free publishing? Free publishing for the development of open access for young researchers, or possibility of such companies?
Well, depends on the way one perceives publishing. Self-archiving, for example, is free depending on the rights one has for self-archiving in various networks. But for example, by free publishing, if we mean, is there anybody who would, for example, cover charges for publishing among young researchers? I don't know. Maybe some of the other panelists would be more well equipped to answer this question.
Okay. It seems to me that we don't have any more questions. Yes, we have one from Korelka. It was nice to hear and see all of you. Oh, that's a comment. Thank you, Korelka.
But if it started, it was nice to see, you might as well finish it.
Yeah.
Or maybe later.
Okay, also our technical directors behind the scene is begging for ending our session. It was really, I would like to thank you really once more for your passion and knowledge you shared with us, and also to all attendees. We had at one moment more than 100 attendees in the session, so it's really showing that OPERAS activities are of great interest to SSH scholarly community. And also, not only SSH, but also we had a question for mathematics and physics too. So thank you once more, and join us after 15 minutes and at our next session. It will be